in general, what I always like to say in the beginning is that as you know, humans, we're taught so much in life, right? Like even our kids, we're taught how to read, to write, to do math. You know, I don't know if any of you have older ones who are learning how to drive a car with driver's ed. Like there's so much that we get trained on, but none of us are actually taught how do we build a life that we want, right? A life that we're proud of. And this happens for parenting too. I know there's a lot of parenting classes out there, but we're not really taught, okay, you now have a baby and you now have a family and you have a job and you have all these other responsibilities. How do you navigate all of that in a way that makes you feel proud and is authentic to the way you want to be as a parent, right? I mean, social media is the worst. It didn't really exist when my 20 and 21-year-old were babies. But right now, I feel like there's so much advice out there. But how do you know you're doing it the way you want to do it? And that's part of what I love to get to with the parents I coach and the adults I coach is how do we get to, you and your life and what do you want and how do you want to be showing up in the world? Because that's what matters. So at Human Better, what we always say is that you get to be the driver of your life, right? You get to steer your life, you get to steer your parenting in the direction that you want it to go. And you also have the opportunity, like I did when my daughter was born and I was overwhelmed, I got to redirect it, right? When the circumstances took me off road and, not the direction I wanted to go, I had to decide, okay, I'm getting back into the driver's seat and I'm going to start heading my life in a way I wanted it to. But I'm going to help you write dreams for how you want to be in your life. Like, what's the parent you want to be? We can talk about parenting. We can talk about your career. We can talk about any area of life. We're going to figure out what roadblocks are in the way of you actually getting those things that you want. And then we're going to set up a structure so you can effectively go after those things and so that you feel happier and prouder. And if you commit to coming to all 4 classes and doing the little assignments I'm going to give you in the classes, I promise that at the end of it, you're going to feel a little bit happier and prouder. And you're going to have some skills that you can apply to, the many months after that. Okay, so I want to start with what I said about the idea that you are the driver of your life. I want you to think about the fact that when you're happy in an area of your life, you've likely been intentional about kind of driving it into a certain direction, toward a certain direction. And if you think about, we are literally driving at every moment of the day, and we're either in the driver's seat or we're in the passenger seat, just letting everything happen to us, right? So we're either letting life take over and just control what's happening and where the car's going, or we're in that driver's seat where we're designing it and we're creating it and we're choosing the direction that we get to go. And when we get in that driver's seat, and I'll just use the analogy of after my daughter was born, I wasn't in the driver's seat those first couple of months. I was letting life hit me and I was reacting to it constantly. But when I finally got into that driver's seat, I felt like I had more power. And I started to feel as though I have the agency to decide like what I want. What do I choose to do? How am I going to react to the things around us or around me? And so that flip of just taking responsibility and taking action and taking authorship for your life is really important because that's how we get around hard things, is when we feel like, okay, what can I do to impact this? And so I want you to all think for a second at an area of your life that's going well. Because if you can look at the things that are going well in your life, anywhere that you've had success, you feel joy, maybe it's a job you got, a project you completed. It could be, money that you've saved. Maybe you helped your child in a way. Like any of those things that you feel that you have done well and you've gone after, my guess is you had a dream that you were gunning for. And you may not have consciously had that dream, like you may not have written it out and said, okay, this is what I'm doing. But in your head and in your heart, you knew that there was something you were going after. It was that job, it was that money you were saving, it was something you were trying to do to support your child, right? You essentially, what I keep saying, got into the driver's seat, right? And then you took all those actions and you made it happen. And once you understand that it's you that created that happiness, like you had that dream, you took those steps, you can then look at the other areas of your life where you don't feel as proud. And we all have them, right? The areas where you've kind of just been in that passenger seat and you've been letting life happen. You realize, okay, wait, if I've done it over here, then I can probably do it over here. But often what we do is that we think we are really good and we control certain places, and other areas we ignore and think we have no control. So what I want you to do right now is I want everybody to sort of turn to the person next to them or raise your hand and we can share. But I want you to think about an area of life or an event that you have that you can confidently say you took that wheel and drove in the direction you wanted to go. You feel proud, you felt committed. And I ask this, and I make every high schooler do this. We actually have great reels of kids like being afraid to brag. And then once they get into it, and once one brags, then the next brags. And this is super important because we have to remember that like we are doing a good job. Even if we feel like we're not in some areas, we really are in others. And we need to connect to that feeling of what it's like when we are in charge. Okay, so here's what I want to do next. We're going to set your personal GPS, right? So I'm using a lot of car analogies, like we're in the driver's seat or the passenger, but I want you to think about this. So all of you live in Texas. I want you to imagine this. Imagine that all of you have this dream. Your dream is to road trip to California. Like you've always wanted to road trip for California. And so you have 3 options to help direct you there. Number 1, you could set the GPS on your phone, right, or in your car to the exact address in California that you want to go to, and you would probably get there really smoothly, right? It doesn't matter if there's a roadblock, if there was a detour, the GPS would keep taking you around those detours and get you to that direction. And that is what we do through coaching, right? We set clear dreams and GPSs, directions, and no matter what happens, we kind of get you there. The second option is that you could choose to totally wing it, just get in the car from Texas, from Austin, not set a GPS on anything. And my guess is you would make it to California, but you would probably take so many more detours and so much more time to get there, right? And this is what most of us do with our lives when we just kind of let life happen to us rather than setting that GPS. We generally know we want to go to California, but we're not holding ourselves accountable to every time we hit a roadblock coming back towards that. Examples might be a job comes up and it's not really your dream job, but you take it because it's right in front of you. That takes you over here, even though maybe your job, the real job you wanted, was here. Something happens to, with your kid and you don't think about, hey, what's the parent I want to be? How do I want to support them in this moment? You just react, which takes you over here, right? Instead of, hey, this is the parent I want to be to this child. The third option is that you could set a GPS to Florida, a direction to Florida. You could follow it and you could wonder why you never made it to California. And this sounds really silly, but I cannot tell you how many of my clients do this, right? And it's when you're going after somebody else's dreams or society's expectations, or you see something on social media and you're like, I have to do that, when you stop to think, hey, is that actually who I want to be? Right? I have this 50-year-old client who I just started working with. She is such a successful lawyer on paper. She is so miserable. And she's been miserable forever because she works a ridiculous number of hours. And she never wanted to be a lawyer, but she was the firstborn. Her dad was a lawyer. And he just told her whole life she'd make a great lawyer. And he kind of pushed her in that way. And that's an example of she actually set the GPS to Florida and then looked up one day and was like, why am I not happy? And so we really want to do option 1, which is you set your GPS direction to what you want in life. And then you keep holding yourself accountable every time you get to a roadblock to getting back on that path. Right. Because if you know that your dream is this new job or to save, for 4 months of living expenses, every time you have a decision, about spending something, I'm just going to use that example. You can hold it up to like, okay, my dream is to save this much. If I spend right now, is that going to get me to the dream? And so you have a very clear decision every time. Am I going to the dream or am I not? If you want to go back to grad school or get a new job, is binge watching Netflix versus doing 30 minutes of job search or work towards your master's? Like you can hold up every decision if you know what your dream is. And I'm not saying that we'll be perfect. And every time we have a decision, we're not going to watch Netflix or we're going to do the right thing. but at least you're making a conscious decision all the time to go generally in the direction of your dreams. And so we are going to write out some personal GPS directions right now. And instead of calling it the GPS anymore, I'm going to call it the dream. And I am going to tell you why I call it the dream, because you guys all have middle school kids. Kids are really good, especially younger, at dreaming, right? I mean, I don't know about yours, but so many of them want to be veterinarians, astronauts, presidents. I had 2 boys who wanted to be professional baseball players at one point. And so they're really good at dreaming. But as adults, we have gotten so kind of responsible in what we expect. And so our dreams and our ability to dream shrink. But we want to bring like some fun and some passion and a love affair back with our lives. And so then we have to kind of think a little bit dreamier. And so what I want you to do is we're going to start in a second looking at the 10 areas of life. In a second, Tammy's going to put them up on the screen, not yet, but we're going to pick an area or 2 of life and we're going to write down our dreams. And then I'm going to hopefully have you tell some people about them before I see you next, because when you write things down and you tell other people about them, it kind of obligates you to go and do something about it, right? Like so I used to be, and I'm not proud of it, but I'm going to share it. I used to be a huge yeller when my kids were little, my boys were little. And I was not proud of it. And I was not proud of it. And I felt guilty. And then I'd lose my patience again and I'd scream. And I finally said to them when they were sort of 10 and 11 or 9 and 10, I don't remember, I said, hey guys, I'm working with a coach. This is one thing I really want to evolve about myself. I'm not proud about it. I don't ever want to yell again. And so I had them hold me accountable. I said, when you guys see me getting worked up, like in a funny way, say, here she goes. And we had a nickname for like, not I'm Casey, but like we had another nickname for the version of myself that would just lose my mind. And they would start to say like, Cassandra's coming. We see Cassandra coming. Oh my God, she's coming, Mom. When I'd start to get worked up. And it reminded me constantly that my dream was to be a better, calmer parent, right? And so by having other people help hold me accountable, it helped me evolve from that person. And I really honestly haven't yelled in years and years, and I used to yell a lot. So we're going to have you write some dreams and tell people about them. So in a minute, so we're going to pick some areas of life. We break at Human Better Life into 10 areas. And the reason we do this is that you are generally only as happy as the lowest common denominator in your life. There's lots of expressions about this. Like, I'm only as happy as my least happy kid. Well, you're only as happy as your least happy area of life too. And it's kind of like basic math, right? If you have 10 areas of life, some are up here, some are here, and some are way down below, right? And you average them all together, your overall happiness is going to be lower because some of those areas of life that you are just avoiding and that you're not proud of. And so we really want to look at those, the ones, and we want to bring them to the forefront so we can deal with them. And so many studies have shown that the fastest way to increase happiness is not by elevating what's already good, but it's actually just dealing with the friction and the things that aren't good. And so we divide life into 10 main areas, which we think make up the whole of your life. And you can't just be one of them. Some are more important than others. Like whenever I work with a private client, I always have them pick the top 3 that they want to elevate that they think will make the biggest impact in their life if they change. So we're not always working on all 10 at once, but you really need to be addressing all of them. So what I want you to look at is, Tammy, will you grab those 10, put those 10 up? Okay, so we've got relationship to self. So that is, sometimes people don't understand what this one is, especially when I talk to kids about it, but that's really, how do you treat yourself? Do you value yourself? What's your self-esteem look like? Do you have any habits that you're really ashamed of or that aren't serving you? What is your inner dialogue about yourself? Are you constantly putting yourself down? Are you prioritizing yourself in your life at all? Or are you the last to ever get any attention? Body and health is pretty obvious, but do you feel good in your body? Are you prioritizing your health? Are you taking care of yourself? Purpose can be a couple different things. It can be your career, your job. It can also be, how are you contributing in the world? And how do you feel about that contribution? Money, pretty obvious. Time. This is not only how you manage your time, but are you actually spending your time in the ways that matter to you versus maybe being pulled into other people's, requirements of your time. And we can talk more about that if you have a question. That's one that people prioritize a lot, to work on a lot. Family, your relationship with family, or perhaps your parenting, friendships, love, or a partner. Home, are you in the home you want? Are you creating the type of home that you want? Fun and adventure. So, anybody have any questions about those areas? Okay. I think that was a thumbs up by Jenny. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to pick one right now or two. We're going to probably have time to write at least one dream, but pick one or two that you want to work on. Remember, you want to have an area that has a little friction and that in your heart, you know that you would be happier if you elevated a little bit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have you write dreams for this one or two areas of your life. And remember, when I say dreams, it's the GPS direction of where you want that area of life to go. And before you start to write, I just want to tell you a couple things about dreaming. And Tammy has a slide on this. So Tammy, will you throw that up? I want you to be specific. I really want you to capture what your vision looks like and feels like so you can really imagine it, right? So what is that area of life? So for instance, it could be something along the lines of, I'm a present parent who listens to my kids as they speak and I support them calmly and with love, right? Like you're really talking about how you want to be as a parent. Or, my time is my own, or I spend time on the things that are priorities to me. Like you just want to sort of think about how is it that you want to be in that area of life. And then I want you to write a couple sentences of the dream in the present tense, because this kind of makes you accountable for it right now. So you don't want to say like, I'm going to try to be a better parent, right? Or I'm going to try to manage my time. You want to say, I am a present parent, off my phone with my kids, or I am on time for everything, as if it's already happening, because it just makes you more accountable and it kind of tricks your brain into thinking that you're already doing it and it's possible. I also want you to be positive. So no negative digs. You want to focus on what you want, not what you don't want. Right. So when I wrote a dream about my parenting, the first one I wrote was, I don't yell at my kids anymore. Fine. That's what I wanted. But that just made me, every time I read it, I cringed, right? Because I was like, oh, I'm such a yeller. And so that doesn't inspire me, right? Like that didn't inspire me to do better. It just sent me a little bit into shame, right? So instead I wrote, I'm a loving, calm parent or something along those lines. I can't remember. I don't have it in front of me, but you want to flip the positive to the positive instead of the negative. And then the last thing is like really be authentic to yourself. Admit for real what you want, not what your friends want, your spouse wants, your dad who wanted you to be a lawyer wants. Like what is it that you want in the world? And so what you just did is sort of set that GPS, that North Star, that stake in the ground. And it's not hard, right? It only took 5 minutes. And so it's not this big, difficult thing to do, to just think about those 10 areas and say, hey, what is something I want in each of these areas that would make me feel prouder? So we're not going to have time to do it tonight, but I do urge you to take the list of that 10 areas. And at the end, Tammy can put it back up and write dreams for all of them. because every time I work with a new client, before we even start working together, they write those dreams for all 10 areas. Because like I said, we want to make sure, we're not avoiding things that are bringing our overall happiness down. And so I would suggest if you have time and the inclination to write the dreams for all 10 areas after this class. But what I want you to do now is underneath your dreams, I want you to describe all of the struggles, all of the problems, the roadblocks, the excuses, all the reasons that you are not already there. Like, why is that workshop not neat? And why is it not set up? Why are you not listening? Why are you not planning vacations, or those kids aren't happy? All the things that we just talked about, your time. What is in the way? And this, I really want you to get detailed. I want you to think really carefully about all the things. It might be painful to admit that, I'm just impatient, so I interrupt people. Or, it might not be fun to admit what's in your way, but the more you can actually put it on paper and we can look it square in the eyes, the more likely you're going to get around it and evolve it. So just spend the next 5 minutes just listing everything, every excuse that you don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you're too tired, whatever it might be, put it all in there. I want you to leave that for the moment, because what we're going to do in the next class is we're going to look at those and all the excuses, all the reasons, all the roadblocks, everything that's in your way. And we're going to start breaking down and figuring out, how do you self-sabotage? What is in your way that you can actually change, evolve, getting you back in the driver's seat to get around all those reasons and excuses. So we're going to really dig into that next class. What I want to do now, just because I'm not going to see you for a while, I wouldn't normally do this if I was going to teach another class next week and see you guys next week, but I'm not going to see you, I don't think, until December. So what I want to do is I'm going to give you we're going to jump into what I would do in a future class. And I want each of you to come up with at least one thing for every area of life. So if you've picked 2 or you've picked 3, you're going to have 2 or 3 things that you can do daily, weekly, or once before our next session that's going to help you get closer to that dream, right? So if you're working on your health, maybe it's to make the 5 doctor's appointments that you've been putting off, and you need to do those before I see you next time. Or if you've been working on getting in shape, maybe it's that you do a 1-minute plank every day for the next 60 days before I see you. If you want to be a better listener, right? Maybe it's that you put your phone away from dinner until your child goes to bed. I don't know if that's, Beth, the way you're not listening with your phone, but just giving examples. If you want to find a new job, maybe it's that you do 30 minutes of job prep and job search 3 times a week, right? I just want you to think about small actions that you can take that will help get you closer to that GPS direction, North Star, stake in the ground dream, right? So I want you to just spend a minute writing those down. And I am going to ask you about them when I see you in December. And we're going to dig deeper into how to actually stay accountable to ourselves, because my guess is that some of you are going to show up having done all of them, and some of you are going to forget about this in the next 24 to 48 hours and not. And so we're going to do a class on accountability and how do we follow through for ourselves. But right now, just spend a minute writing down your 1, 2, or 3 actions that you're going to take. So we only have a couple minutes left. What I want you to think about, and I said this a little bit earlier, but if you can find an accountability partner or buddy who can help you stay true to these dreams. So you would read these dreams to a friend, a spouse, your child, whomever, and say, hey, this is what I'm working towards. These are the things that I'm going to do every week to help myself get to those. You're going to be more likely to follow through if you can have someone checking on you, and maybe you can check on them, and cheer each other on. So can everybody think of somebody that can be their accountability buddy and help them with this? Okay, great. So your homework, because I really hope you all come back for our next session, which Tammy put in the chat, but is December 12th. And I guess it's going to be in the cafeteria, but it'll also be on Zoom. And we're going to talk more deeply about accountability and the inner voices and all of those things. Your homework is to write the dreams in all 10 areas, really fine tune the dreams for the 1, 2, or 3 areas that you chose to focus on, and add to them, make them juicy. They should be 5 to 6 sentences long. You really want them to excite and inspire you, and have details of like, how are you being in that area? What does it feel like to, be in that body that you're working on, or to manage your time and spend time on the priorities that matter to you? So just make them more juicy. Then add to the list of all those reasons and excuses for those 3 areas or 2 areas that you're working on, so you can get those really beefed up so we can bring those to the next class. And then find your accountability buddy and keep your promises. Sounds like a lot of homework, but it's really not, because you are investing, right, time in yourself and getting happier and getting prouder. And so if you spent 10 minutes doing everything I just said, and then maybe a few minutes every week keeping those promises, I'm telling you, you will feel better by the time we even meet.